Beyond the forbidden.
I've often said this, having been in the CIA myself for years, back in the Vietnam War. I've told people that it's the alien functions like an intelligence community. They lie, and they lie consistently. He said, I'm pretty sure that the chupacabra exists, whatever that thing is. I said, okay. I said, a lot of your cohorts are not going to agree with that. And he said, I knew that if anybody knew anything about it, you would. And I said, I actually would. I said, I think I said, first of all, I got one in my freezer. He said, what? I said, I've got one in my freezer. That's number one. When I tell you I know something, I don't tell you because I think it's true. I can go to court on it. There's something you have to understand about yourself, and it's true of the alien phenomena, the ghost phenomena, everything else. You're unique. There's nothing like you. You're sought after by ghosts, demons, angels, aliens, and even your government. If you won't use your brain to think very well, the government will be glad to supply you with plenty of other thoughts that you can dwell on. That'll keep you tied up for the next 20 years. They do that. You're unique. You have enormous potential. You're so unique that the Scripture even talks about you being protected by angelic interventions. It doesn't mean the alien hadn't been around. It just means this program called contact or abduction has only been here for a couple hundred years max. And that program is almost over. It's only got a few years left, according to the alien, and it failed. It did not net them what they wanted. Everybody, well, they came here to get our DNA. No, sorry, thank you for playing. You lose. That's the excuse. Those are excuses for why they abduct you. We're here to check your DNA. We're here to upgrade your DNA. We're here to do that. It's more likely especially some of us, they're here to downgrade our DNA, if anything. I said, my point is this. It doesn't mean that people can't be spiritual. It doesn't mean that. It just means that, I said, okay, the other half of the equation, Native American Irish, a good example. He said, well, the Irish are really spiritual. I said, listen to me carefully. You're missing it. You're missing the barn by 15 yards. When you go to Notre Dame, there's a big sign there. It says, the Fighting Irish. I wonder why they put that up there. Why didn't they say, the Spiritual Irish? They didn't put that up there. They put the Fighting Irish. Busting heads and taking names is what we've done our entire life. At Native Americans, Irish, Scots, and Celts. That's what we did. Fighting is what we did. War, that's what we did. Now, if you understand that in terms of the alien, maybe he didn't come here to upgrade my DNA. Maybe he came here to downgrade it. Get me off the books, so to speak. I'm a problem.
Become a member on Patreon to get full access to all exclusive content. A few of the perks is the full-length ad-free video version of the interviews, face-to-face interviews, bonus shows, and behind-the-scenes footage. You will also receive the video interview way in advance before the audio-only interview gets dropped on all platforms. Sign up and become a member today for only $3 a month. The link is in the description.
Welcome to Beyond the Forbidden. Today on the show, I got somebody that I believe this is my fourth time to interview him. The first time was in person at the Skydancer UFO conference back in 2018, I believe. But Derrel Sims, the alien hunter, welcome back to Beyond the Forbidden. How you been, man?
I'm delighted to be here.
So we've been kind of emailing a little bit back and forth. I don't know, trying to set something up, say at least the past, probably since October-ish, maybe November-ish. Mm-hmm. And I know you've been really busy. So what's been going on in the world of the alien hunter?
Oh, a lot of evidentiary work. I've got several major finds that I want to explore, and it's going to take about close to $100,000 to exploit them. And so anyway, I'm just looking for someone to finance the operation without trying to take the lion's share, so to speak. But anyway, they're just important finds that I think will shake the UFO community pretty well.
Regarding the abduction research, correct?
That too.
That too. Okay. All right then. Well, keep me updated then. Whenever that time comes, whenever you can spill some more information out there, unless there's maybe a few little nuggets little breadcrumbs you can give us.
Well, there's a group that invited me to Seattle to their UFO conference. I'm going to be one of the primary speakers there, and then they said we'd like to invite you to our Sasquatch conference, and I said that's fine. I can do that as well. Said, do you know anything about it? And I said, well, probably not as not as focused on that as I am other things. I said, but I've had hair samples since 1989, and I've got a urine sample and a fingernail sample from a adolescent. So I said, I guess I'm doing all right.
When is that conference taking place? The one in Seattle?
That's that you would ask. That's already on my web, out on my Facebook site.
Okay.
Go to Facebook, the Alien Hunter, Derrel Sims, and you'll find it up there. It's good night. It's gonna be a very good conference. I'll be there. Mike Barra will be there, and several other people. So it's gonna be decent. Really gonna be good.
So our interview that we did in person back at the Skydance UFO conference, I remember you saying that in that interview, it's done really well. Gotten a lot of feedback off the interview since then. Remember you stating something along the lines of the aliens are made, hatched, and cloned or manufactured for the purpose or something like that.
That's correct.
I don't know if I asked you on the last interview or not. I don't remember, Derrel. That we did actual podcast last year. But what is that purpose? I know that might be a big, that's a lot of rabbit holes probably to go down, but what is the purpose? And I don't think I asked you that in that in-person interview, but yeah, what's that purpose? Because I've actually had a few people respond back like that they wish I would have asked, and I don't think I did, even on the podcast that we did last year. But yeah, go ahead, Derrel.
Well, it would take a whole show to even answer the question, and I'll get into why that is in a moment. But in a nutshell, it's my thesis based on 50 years research that the entities that we're looking at, the 7 primary entities, the little gray, the tall gray, the Nordic, the Bigfoot, the reptile, the praying mantis, and so on, are beings that have been made, hatched, cloned, or manufactured for the purpose of making us believe something else. And in fact, I've often said this, having been in the CIA myself for years, back in the Vietnam War. I've told people that it's the alien functions like an intelligence community. They lie, and they lie consistently, just like we did in the CIA, the Mossad, the KGB. It doesn't make any difference. The purpose of an intelligence community is to gather information and to make you believe something else about what we do. and specifically what's not true. I mean, the sad way of looking at it is basically you hired us to lie to you, not to the world, but to you too. And for instance, on a practical level, how your audience might entertain that is, how'd you like the Roswell story? It was a weather balloon.
Yeah.
And if you didn't like that, we had 3 other stories for you as well. It didn't make any difference.
Swamp gas.
It didn't happen 3 or 4 different ways. It happened only one way. But it doesn't matter. You just keep telling stories and people will gravitate to the one that they like best. And that's the way the intelligence community works. Well, the alien isn't any different. They function the same way. And people kind of like, they think they understand what you just said. And let's play it and see if it works. The alien functions like an intelligence community. We in the CIA, we had what we call cover stories. The alien has cover stories as well. Their biggest cover story is called a screen memory. It's a pictorial and a very powerful feeling of an event that occurred that didn't occur like you think it did. That's the whole point of it.
Your friend, your late friend, Dr. Carla Turner, called it the virtual reality syndrome or something like that.
It is.
Something like that, yeah.
She was absolutely right about that. It's nonsensical stories. It can be your child got picked up by Casper the Friendly Ghost. He's pure white with large black eyes. It doesn't make any difference what imagery they use. It's imagery that you trust or that you feel it's nonsensical. It couldn't possibly be true. But the fact is, it was true. It wasn't a ghost, but it was something else. And how that plays out from the alien point of view, I can point to my own case. And when I was 4 years old, the same way that the stories don't vary that much. It's the same thing. The entity that's introducing himself to you is presented as an alien from another world. The fact is, that's not even true. Never has been true. That's the cover story for the alien. He wants you to believe he's an alien from another planet. The fact is, he isn't. If you look at the DNA, even a cursory look from a medical view of each of these beings, you'll see clearly that there is, in fact, no such thing as that you can't prove that they're aliens from other worlds by looking at their exterior, so to speak. And I'll carry this out to its logical conclusion. We'll take a few examples. Someone challenged me on this on a show I did in England, and they said, well, you're wrong. And I said, no, I'm actually right. I said, but it'll probably take you about 10 years to figure it out, but that's okay. I said, I've been doing this for a long time. I don't jump to conclusions or pick out an interesting view because I like it.
Over 40 years, right, Derrel?
Yeah, yes.
Over 40 years.
So anyway, I said, for instance, a little gray alien. I said, he's got an IQ of about 80. That's a moron. What alien comes from another world, from a far distant star system, that's got an IQ of a moron? That doesn't even make sense. How do you know they're like a moron? I said, because they can't even get your clothes on right. They put you in the wrong bed sometimes, the wrong house, sometimes the wrong car. They drop people off in the wrong locations. In one case we have, with 2 witnesses, they dropped them off in the wrong state. You might tend to notice that there's a mistake in that. You get dropped off and you get picked up in Colorado and dropped off in Dalhart, Texas. You might notice there's a problem with that story. And especially when there are engineers involved, and that just blows people's minds. Well, the reason is because that particular alien that drops you off or picks you up, which I call the cosmic pizza delivery guy, and you're the pizza, it basically amounts to, how shall I say it? He makes mistakes. He's only got an IQ of 80. He remembers kind of where he picked you up, and so he's going to put you back approximately where you got. And your clothes are often removed in the event, and sometimes they put the other guy, if there's two of you, sometimes they'll put the other guy's clothes on you because he won't remember that those are not yours. In one case, we had a little girl, a real small young girl was in the abduction, and so was a military guy. She came home with his field jacket, and he left with her little tiny T-shirt. You can imagine how he felt trying to get that thing on. It barely would fit his hand and his arm, much less him. And when she came back, her parents freaked out, said, "Where did you get this?" And she said, "I don't know." And again, they make mistakes. So to begin with, the small alien, the small gray, has an IQ of about 80. He's not very smart. He's made that way on purpose. He's made, hatched, cloned, and constructed that way to do a certain job, and that's all. The taller gray being that is the boss, or some people refer to him as the doctor, so to speak. That guy is got an IQ about 135, 140. He's very smart, and he knows what he's doing. The little gray being they're always afraid of him because he's the boss. He is it. And it would behoove them to not make mistakes around him because he can get rid of you very easily because there are a million of them like them. They're just like toasters. You know, if you make mistakes around them, they'll just get rid of you and get another one. They can care less. So these guys live in fear of their life, literally. When you look at the praying mantis is a good example. These are in the alien story. If you look at it from the viewpoint I'm giving it to you here, it's proof that if evolution did exist, it doesn't with the alien for sure. Because how do you get a 7-foot tall praying mantis with an IQ of about 180? How does that happen?
I would guess by listening and to a lot of your lectures and interviews that he was made, hatched, cloned, or manufactured.
That's exactly right. So the question is, where do you get praying mantis DNA? Probably not from Zeta Reticuli, probably not from Mars, probably not from the moon, but we have several hundred species of praying mantises on planet Earth. If you want to take that DNA and create, hatch, clone, make, or manufacture another being, it's called transgenics, and you can actually do that. It works. Another illustration is the reptile being. Good example. I said, well, you know, there's so many different kinds. These are all races of beings. I said, no, they're not. They're models, like in a car company. If you go to the Chevy company, you look at the cheap end of the cars, you'll see a Chevette down there. You look at the high end, you'll see a Corvette Stingray. In between, there's all these models. That's exactly what you're looking at with the alien. These are just models. They're not races of anything. They're hatched, cloned, made, and manufactured for the purpose of making you think they came from another planet. They don't. Now, the interesting thing about the reptile is somebody was questioning me about this one time. And they said, well, what about the reptile? And I said, what about him? I said, well, we just, these things they're just, they're from other planets. And I said, really? I said, remember reading in a Bible, actually, in the 3rd chapter of Genesis, about this reptile guy come walking in the Garden of Eden.
What do you say with that?
Interesting character. I said, he's standing there talking to her. He's got an incredible IQ. And so smart, he completely fooled the first woman and deceived those two. And my point is that there he is, right in the Garden of Eden. So if you think this stuff hadn't been around for a while, you're the only one missing the point. And then you've got the human being like entity they have called the Nordic. I said, I'm going to take a wild guess at where you might get Nordic DNA. How about Norway? That probably would be a good guess. The point is that this is one of the reasons, in my opinion, the Nazis were so bent on creating a super race of blonde-haired and blue-eyed people, because they had already seen them. They, in fact, were the Nordics. And in fact, other people had seen them as well in the military. And it's a provable fact. You ever heard of the naval operations and air operations in Antarctica, and also in the Arctic under a particular rear admiral?
Yeah, Byrd.
That's exactly correct. And he went and saw them, met with them, and was stunned by their looks and so on.
By the Nordics?
Yeah, exactly. And he saw the gray style alien and so on. He was, I'm just saying, they've been around for a while, and there's a reason for that. The question is, why would someone go out and hatch, clone, make, manufacture these entities, introduce them as aliens to humans? What's the point? Somebody's in the business of deception. Intelligence communities are in the business of deception. That's what they do. That's the name of the game. And they do real well at it. In my presentation, the one I just recently did in Manchester, England, they were asking some questions, and I said, well, I use 7 hats to answer questions. I said, my investigative process works 7 different ways, in effect. Literally, everybody's got a UFO hat. And by that, I mean, a UFO hat is a lot of fun to wear. I got one, everybody does. If you like UFOs or into that sort of thing, you have a UFO hat.
That's mine right there, Derrel.
That's the only problem with that hat is it gets fooled real easily. There have been people who have fooled us in times past and still do it. Some of them still doing it. And they get away with it because the UFO hat will buy into just about any story you want to make up or send out there. The second hat, which I hope your audience will attempt to put on today, so to speak, is the cop hat. As a former cop and a detective, my job was to use a different type of thinking when I'm investigating cases. As an example, I got over 2,000 cases worldwide, and I've interviewed tens of thousands of people over the years. And I can assure you, when the cop hat gets on, it's one that most people don't like. It looks at you like you're the perp, and it doesn't really, it's more interested in the facts of the story rather than your opinion, because that really doesn't mean a whole lot. And so the cop hat is extremely investigative. It has its own skills. It's very, very effective. We have several levels of that we can get into. Then we have the medical and psych hat. The medical is where like if we're studying implants or this sort of thing, doing a surgery, that's where that hat comes into play. But so does the psychological, because when you fill out our forms and so on, and do that sort of thing, there's a psychological and a medical aspect, and a cop hat all are involved in those forms.
I don't know if I told you last time, Derrel, my wife is a psych nurse, and I was military police. I've told you that before.
Oh, yeah.
And my wife's a psych nurse. I don't know if she's told me I try to learn a lot of things that she's learned over the years, with that. And it can be very helpful. And you did a lot of that in intelligence also.
That's correct. And so I incorporate a lot of that into our forms. So when people fill them out, they'll often, if they're real abductees, they'll usually say, "It's like you're reading my mail. How do you know all this weird stuff?" Because I'm one of you. That's why. And so we have a medical hat and a psych hat, and then you got a science hat. In other words, when the implants or something like that is found and we begin to study it, we take it to the science level. And the science hat, when it gets on, it's probably the most unfriendly of all the hats. It doesn't. It's pure science. It doesn't care about anything else. Then we've got an intelligence hat. What's an intelligence hat? That's a hat basically that deceives. That's what it does. The aliens got one, so to speak. That's why they're so good at what they do. They got people out there believing they're aliens from other planets. I mean, name one person out there that doesn't believe that. They either believe they're from another planet or they're from another dimension or time traveler or something, but anything except the real thing. The fact is that they're hatch, cloned, made, and manufactured for a specific purpose, and that's to deceive you. Then outside that, we've got a Native American hat. Native American hat is a hat that has, in my roots, and it has a different perspective at looking at things. It really does. Then we've got a spiritual hat, which is not psychic. It's not the religious stuff and so on. It's strictly spirituality, and it looks at things totally. Now, all these hats, every time I'm reviewing a case or information or evidence, all those hats are on at the same time, and they don't all agree with each other. They have different viewpoints, and that's okay with me. But when people ask me a question like, "I want you to tell me what the real story is on the alien," I have to determine what hat that person's wearing or can even live with before I can even answer the question.
I was just about to ask you that, Derrel. How do you differentiate, or how do you determine which hat to put on?
Well, if they've got a UFO hat on, they're gonna have to get something just slightly better than a UFO hat answer. That's all. They're not going to be able to deal with a spiritual hat or a Native American hat, and the intelligence hat they're not going to like at all. They're not going to deal with that at all. No, nobody's deceiving me. It'll take you about 25 years to wake up. If someone is in the, let's say, is a UFO, they got a UFO hat, but they're a psychologist is an example. Now, I debate these people all the time, and they want an answer based on a psychological answer based on wearing their UFO hat. And if you don't give them that answer, this is funny. I did a presentation for a group back in the Northwest about a year ago, and they had an MD on there, so I knew I was going to have to answer medical. It's got to be medical, and it's got to be strictly from their viewpoint. I knew that right off the bat. And they had an engineer, so I knew that I had to have a science hat for that one. And then the investigator, she was a really nice lady. I liked her a lot. She had kind of a cop UFO hat, kind of. And so that's how you had to answer all the questions. Well, the doctor, the MD, got into it with me right off the bat, said, "Well, I just don't see that at all." And I said, "Okay, tell me what part you disagree." All of it. I said, "Okay. Could you be more specific?" "Well, I just don't believe there are hats cloned, made, manufactured." And I said, "Okay. Tell me where you get a 7-foot praying mantis from." Total silence. "Where do you get a reptile that talks and can outsmart people?"
It's because he only wears one hat.
Well, I mean that. So anyway, I knew that the only way I could help her out there was to just start getting into the implants and getting medical with her. So this means that. And I said, with great respect, I said, I've been involved in 27 of those surgical interventions, and I'm very familiar with that phenomena. And you aren't, so I'm going to take my view over yours. I'm an MD. I said, with great respect, I said, I work with cardiovascular surgeons, brain surgeons, and others. These are people, and you know it. You couldn't carry their luggage. These are fellows in their own industry. They're not the local MD. And I said, I don't mean that with downgrading you or anyone else. I'm just telling you, I've worked with some very high-class people, and I couldn't carry their luggage. I said, make no mistake about it. I said, but whenever we go into that surgical OR, we look at those x-rays and MRIs, they ask me the question, what do you want to do? What is that thing? How does it function? How do we remove that? What do we do? What is there? What kind? We don't know what to do. We can cut it out, but that doesn't mean anything. I said, well, you could destroy it if you do it wrong. That's why you're here, to tell us what to do. So that's what I do. I said, so when I say that, I say that with respect to you in the medical field, but your area of the medical field may not reach into that realm. Well, she didn't like that at all. Woo! Oh, she got hot. As well, I said, in fact, like usually there's a biological membrane around a lot of these objects, a dense dark membrane. And she says, well, that's from that's an inflammatory process. And I said, that's what most doctors would say. What we found is that wasn't the case at all. What? I said, I told 250 surgeons at John Muir Medical Hospital in a presentation I did before we ever did any surgeries in 1994. I gave them 5 things that we would find if these implants are really alien. One of them, there'd be no signs of technology whatsoever. 2, there would be a biological encasement, and that encasement would not be native to that part of the body. Like what? And I said, the dense dark membrane was not a inflammatory response, either chronic or acute. It, in fact, was keratin. Keratin is your hair, your fingernails, your surface skin. That's it. Well, how could that be? I said, that's what everybody else was asking after we did the first surgery. How could you possibly know when you've never done a surgery before? How would you know that? I said, because I was there. I was the recipient of an alien implant at age 12. And so I maybe ought to back up just a little bit to help out the audience a little bit. My own event started in 1952 at age 4. And what had happened is the entity had already placed me back in bed. He had taken me through the wall, put me back in bed. And I have this propensity to switch on when something's wrong. I've even done that in surgery. I was in a general surgery with a general anesthesiologist and 2 specialists at a hospital here in Houston, and I sensed something wrong, and I just opened my eyes and sat up and scared the anesthesiologist half to death. He thought he was going to get sued because the anesthesia wasn't working.
Oh,
and
wow.
I asked my doctor, I said, who is that guy? And I was talking about the other doctor who was there. Somebody was in the room I didn't know. And he said, that's Dr. So-and-so. I said, well, Dr. Albina. I said, what's his job? And he said, I said, well, basically what you've done is sub out the work to someone else because you're not qualified to do a chemical pain injection. He said, yes, that's true. I said, okay, I just wanted to know. I think I'll go back to sleep now. And he says, please do. And I laid back down and the anesthesia worked fine. My point is that I have this propensity to switch on whenever I sense something's wrong. And that I found that out at age 4 in that event, because what happened is I was laying in bed, I sensed something wrong. I opened my eyes rapidly, and I saw it walking away from me back toward the wall. He was going to walk through it. I didn't know that. I had no memory of it. I mean, he told me I wouldn't remember, and I didn't. So I saw him walking away, and I thought to myself in my head, who is that? What's he doing? It's freezing under, it's cold. What's he's going to bump into the wall? And instantly he turned around. Now I said that to myself in my head. He heard every word. So I learned something about him real quick.
What kind of being or entity was this?
It was a gray alien, about 4 foot tall, with perfectly round eyes, not the elliptical version like you see in Hollywood, but this was 1952, and his eyes were perfectly round, about 1.5 inches across, little pinholes for a nose, no ears, a slit for a mouth, and he never moved his mouth. Everything I heard in my head, both to skull contact, so to speak. And the next thing he realized at that point, I heard him say something, which is rather weird, because I heard in my head him speaking. He said, "It's awake." And I realized he's talking about me, because there wasn't anybody else in that room but me. And
he said, he said, "It's awake," like you're a lab rat.
Exactly. So I was amazed at the whole thing, because how I'd never heard anybody else's voice in my head but mine. Now I'm hearing someone else's, and he's talking about me. And at that point, I'm not paralyzed, not scared, not anything. I just can't figure this guy out. And kids look at things differently. And this is important for the audience to understand this. When I looked at him, I started with his eyes, which were stunning. They were very controlling. And I saw his nose, went down his lips, his bony little neck, skinny little body, and he didn't have any clothes on. And I was amazed, because it was wintertime, cold, freezing. And I thought, well, what in the world? How can this be? And my eyes went down. He didn't have any mammary glands. He didn't have a belly button. He didn't have a TT. Now, little kids would notice stuff like that. The adults probably wouldn't. They'd say, "Oh my gosh, you're an alien from another planet." Well, kids are a little more definitive about things like that. And now, years later, as I reviewed that event, as I became an investigator, I realized he didn't have a belly button because he wasn't born.
Is made, hatched, cloned, manufactured.
He didn't have genitalia because he didn't get here the same way we did. They don't procreate. So how does that what does that mean? It means he was hatched, cloned, made, or manufactured for some particular reason. I'll leave it up to the audience to figure out what that is. I've already given them a big hint, but some people don't like those hints, and that's okay. Make up your own. But the fact is, that was the next part of the event was he decided to come toward me, paralyzed me at that point. And when he did, I fell back on the bed. I was so shocked. I'd never felt fear like that in my entire life. I mean, the fear was horrific. I fell back on the little bed, and I pushed so hard against the bed so he couldn't get near me. The bed split, moved apart from the wall, the little tiny cot, and it pushed the bed apart, and I fell down and bounced my little head off the floor. And it was every kid's nightmare. It picked up the covers of the bed and lifted them up and stuck its huge head under the bed right next to my face. And boy, that was just horrific. And the image he projected, he didn't shapeshift. The image he projected to me was that of a clown, a pure white-faced clown with red hair, with large eyes. And many abductees have phobias of clowns, and they have no idea where they came from. I'll give you a hint. And I kept shaking my head, no, 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 no. And I would not focus on that. He tried to get me to focus as hard as I could so that I would wake up in the morning remembering that I had a dream of a bad dream of a clown. In other words, there was no alien. It didn't happen. So I would doubt my own self. But I knew what it was, and I wanted to remember him for what he was. and the clown he really was, not the clown he wanted me to think he was. So the fascinating and the most important part of the story for me was this. I learned how, probably quite accidentally. Are you familiar with the concept when they, on TV, especially in political situations, they have something they call a hot mic?
Yeah.
Okay, when a hot mic is when the mic is on and it's not supposed to be, and everybody can still hear. I found out how to hot mic these guys so I can still listen to him. Like when he talked to me at first, he said, "It's awake." I can still hear him talking, though he shuts me off. I can still hear them thinking. This is why I learned so much about the alien over the years.
Is that something you just learned over the years?
No, I actually learned how to do that at age 4, accidentally, I'm sure. I mean, I didn't figure it out, I don't think. But I've even tested it several years ago when we were up on the Snowmass Wilderness with 7 investigators. And we had one of them, he gets abducted every year up there. So we took him, placed him in the middle of our encampment and next to a cliff. And we had someone sitting there all night right in front of his door of his tent all night long. He would sit there every night. He was a commercial airline pilot. And all of us were strategically placed. And long story short, the alien finally showed up on the 7th night of our encampment. And everybody pretty much wore out and tired and everything. But anyway, I had a hard time sleeping because we were so high up in the Snowmass Wilderness. It's hard to breathe. I mean, it really had an effect on me. So I was awake most of the time, and I saw the alien come by my tent, and I saw the light on the outside. We had a big lantern right there next to the guy in front of the tent. And that lantern lit up the alien and gave his shadow on my tent. And I wanted to see if I could still hot mic him. And I could, and I was absolutely amazed that I could figure out what was in his thinking. And the fact is, nothing was in there. Only what they were telling him to do was coming through. That was so bizarre. So the skill of hot micing is something that can be taught, in my opinion. And we've used it in different events before. One of our abductees, a lady who was horrified that her children were going to get taken because they threatened her if she gave me any more information, they were going to come get her kids. And so I worked with her to defend herself, and she actually tore the eye cover off the alien on 2 different occasions and found under the eye cover a red stippled screen of 6 little white lines running back and forth across the red stippled screen. Something you might see in something biomechanical in a laboratory. Yeah.
What so you mentioned people having phobias of clowns. And so with your over 40 something years of research into this phenomena, Derrel, with either phobias of clowns or any other types of weird phobias that a certain individual may have, but they don't know why. It could be a spike, but they don't know what, they're just terrified of a certain phobia, whatever it is. And a lot of it is clowns. Do you think that's a really good indicator for somebody that is investigating that's one little key factor to look at, when it comes to if
that
somebody
is just one thing. Yes.
Okay. If somebody has been abducted, is there any other kind of key?
Yes, there are. Missing time is a big thing to note. For instance, you're supposed to go to a birthday party at 7:00 that night. You get there at 10. Everybody wonders where you're at, and you're looking at them like they're nuts, and they're looking at you like you're rude because you showed up 3 hours late, and you don't know why you're late. You have no idea why. So missing time is a good illustration. Coming back from an event like that with certain phobias, there are things that, and I tell this to people over and over and over. I'll give you a case in point. In England, I was speaking to a father with a daughter about 18 years old, and there was no question she was an abductee, and she wanted to ask me a bunch of questions, and I said, okay. I said, are you coachable? And she said, I think so. And I said, many abductees are not coachable. They say they are, but they're not. She said, what do you mean? I said, if you really have been abducted, I said, one of the things that is true in most cases, 99% of us, and that includes me, are downloaded with a program, which means that you will, you literally will, how the best way to say it?
Kind of like a program or something like that, or
well, it is. It's an app, and the app is so interesting because the app literally you will hide, destroy, or ignore your own evidence. And she said, "Well, her father said, well, she'll do anything you say." I said, "Okay." I said, "Go get me an X-ray." She looked at me and said, "No." I said, "Why do you think that is?" "I don't know. I don't know why I don't want to get an X-ray." I said, "If you're having these experiences and you're wanting one of the top investigators in the world to work with you, I'm here in England right now with you. We're taking up everybody's time. There's 1 million people out there, got 1 million questions, and you're telling me no. Do you ever wonder where that comes from?" I said, "That's a program. It's an app that's downloaded in you." And I said, basically what people do is they don't realize that these are programs that are downloaded into you as an abductee. That's just the way it works. I said, you will hide, ignore, or destroy your own evidence.
When is that? Well, when does that happen, Derrel? You briefly mentioned it last year about the apps. It wasn't much. Is it during the virtual reality center or in that virtual world that they put inside your mind? Is that when it's uploaded or whatever?
People think you have that if they think I haven't been abducted, and they don't know whether they have or not, but they think if I haven't been abducted, then that's not true of me. It doesn't make any difference. If you've seen an alien, been near a craft, or any experience like that with them, you're already downloaded. That's just the way it works. And that's just one. And there are different ones. One of them, there are abductees that end up with horrific fears of bridges, elevators, and this sort of thing. Now, on a psychological level, when you put your psych hat on, that could be due to an imbalance of fluid in the inner ear. That we know that's possible. But some of these people didn't have an inner ear problem. They ended up with a horrific fear. They see an elevator, they just take off. They won't get on it. They will not get on that thing. They've already been on something like an elevator. It took them up and down, and they don't want to ever do that again. And that's they're remembering the fear is what they're doing. And so these are just apps. They're little mini programs that literally they're messengers that affect the transmission of neurochemistry or other processes which may activate or alter your memory or even give you false memories or other suggestions. These are all part and parcel to the programs that the alien is running on you.
Almost like a Manchurian candidate, kind of.
Well, why would they be running a program on you? Who cares about you anyway? That some of your doctors or scientists say, you're not much more than pond scum. If that's the case, why did somebody come a long, long way across the stars, so to speak, to visit pond scum?
Right.
That doesn't make any sense at all. The fact is, there's an ancient book that I find fascinating because it works, and it's ancient scripture, the Bible, and it says you were created wonderfully. Now, the question is, if you're created wonderfully, why is it you don't know that, but the alien does? Why is he interested in you? Because there's nothing like you anywhere in the universe, nowhere.
Is it the soul that they're after?
No, in one of our major events, they wanted to know where the soul was. And these were the people that were involved in the hatch, clone, made, and manufactured you, not the alien, because the alien doesn't have a clue. They're just doing whatever they're told. The ones calling the shots are not the alien. That's who you think's calling the shots. They're not in charge. So these other entities that are running the show, so to speak, were fascinated. They want to know where the soul was and where the human spirit was and how that functions. And the fact is, they didn't know. I found that whole thing fascinating. They did not know. I thought they knew everything. Well, they don't.
The ones that are calling the shots, Derrel, do you think that they are, let's say, I don't know, they have some type of, I don't know how to, satanic agenda, that they are possessed by some type of force? Do you think that's because it seems like the malevolent actions of whoever these rogue factions are that have created, manufactured these aliens, hatch, clone, made, manufactured these aliens, it seems like there's a nefarious agenda at play, you know?
Well, in my opinion, there is a nefarious agenda. Why would somebody alter your neurotransmitters like serotonin and dopamine to control you? What's the point of that? What's the point of abducting you? If a bad guy goes to your house, and I'll give you a perfect case. Okay. I was a private investigator and a bounty hunter and everything else. Whenever a friend of mine got kidnapped, whenever we finally caught the kidnappers and got all that resolved, brought her son back to her and all that, and to the wife, no one ever came to me and ever said the following: Derrel, there are good kidnappers and bad kidnappers. But I hear people tell me that about aliens all the time. Mm-hmm. There are good aliens and bad aliens, really? Mm-hmm. So I guess we should get some good kidnappers to come get your kids. None of that works for me. Yeah. It just that makes no sense whatsoever. It's applying a logic to the alien that doesn't exist. They like it that you believe that, but it just doesn't work in their world. They're not into that.
Maybe they're afraid of people like you and I and others that, to one degree, they're afraid of the gut, the pure drive that some of us have, Derrel, you know, because if I know about it, they mess or tamper with my 15-month-old daughter. You know what I mean? There's no place on this earth that, you know what I mean?
They're not going to be safe.
I would disobey any law there is to come after you. I will be Alien Hunter 2.0. You know what I mean?
That's the way it works. When they came after my son at age 6, that changed me from a concerned father to an alien hunter.
You're by far one of the most that I get feedback and recommendations to get back on.
Well, they can write me any questions they want and for details or argue with me if they think they have a better answer than I do. That's okay. I'm coachable. I listen. I don't think I know everything. I'm very sure of what I do know. But if I find new information that's better information, then that's fine with me. I have no problem with that. It's just called new information. It's that simple.
And speaking of new, there's going to be a lot of new people that are new to your work. So you have mentioned about your son of, I guess, the creation, I guess, of the alien hunter before. But for the newcomers that are listening to you right now, explain what happened, how the alien hunter was created and what happened with your son.
Well, I had approximately 10 UFO encounters in my life from age 4 to age 17. So for 13 years, I had these events, about 10 of them. I met the praying mantis being and all that. And after my events ended at age 17, and in that last event, which was interesting, the reason it was more interesting than the others is because in that last event, the alien didn't show up. The one who hatched, cloned, made, and manufactured them, 5 of them showed up. Mm. And they weren't there to abduct. They're not there to... The best way to think of them is if the alien had an SS, it would be like that. So after that event, nothing else happened, and I was elated. And I thought, well, it's over, and I just kept it quiet to myself. The problem is when my son was born, I had a daughter, and then I later had a son. And about 2:30, between 2:30 and 3 in the morning, we're living out in the Huffman area where the Cash Landrum famous case took place, down the street from us. I set up immediately, and like I said, I switch on very quickly when something's wrong. And I got up out of bed and I ran through the house. I ran past my son's room because I knew he wasn't in that room at all. I knew my daughter was asleep. My wife was laying in bed asleep, and I ran into the kitchen area, the dining room, and there he was, 6 years old, looking out the back door through the glass window. And I watched him for quite a while, and I said, "David, what are you watching?" He said, "The little red light." Well, the little red light's a screen memory. There is no little red light out there. It's a focus. It's something to focus you so that you won't remember. And at that point, I'm looking at him, and finally I told him, I said, "Go back to bed. It's okay." And he wanders, and he's not a sleepwalker. All that, mark all that stuff off. It's never happened then or before or since. And he went back to bed, and my wife looks at me. She's standing there next to me at this time, looking at me, watching him go to his room. And she looks at me and says, "What's happening?" And that was a very uncomfortable period for me because I'd never told anyone. And now I'm having to explain to her about a lifetime of abductions, and now it's happening to my son.
Before you continue, how long were you and your wife together before you told her?
Well, see.
Roughly.
6, close to 10 years.
Mm.
And so I explained it to her, and then we finally went back to bed. And now the effects on my son were horrific because 2 things happened. One is the alien showed up for the abduction. That's true. But there was a problem. The reason I woke up so quickly and I knew there was something seriously wrong is one of the ones that hatched, cloned, made, and manufactured him showed up. Now I'll explain that to your audience so they'll understand it. When one of those guys shows up, which is extremely rare in the UFO world, but when that happens, your life will be forever changed. You won't be the same. It's not like an abduction experience where you like it or don't like it. It's not like that at all. My son and I were walking the next day, And in fact, the next morning, I noticed something wrong in his room, and I asked him what he was doing, and he had set up a bow and arrow, a compound bow with a huge broadhead on it, with razors in it, and set that up at the door. So if anybody came at night in that door again, they would have been impaled by the arrow. Now, that wouldn't make any difference whether it was me or his sister or his mother. He didn't plan on that. He knew that if they came back, they were going to get it.
He was scared.
He was fixing to get somebody at 6 years old. That's the impact it had on his life. Well, the next morning, we were walking, and he looked at me and said something that bothered me to no end. He said, Dad, what they did to me changed my consciousness. Now, how in the world a kid 6 years old explain something like that to an adult? He said, I no longer care for people like I did. Mm. And I knew who it was that did that, because he was one of the beings that was in my room that last night in my last event.
How did that make you feel? How did that make you feel, Derrel?
I went from a concerned father to an alien hunter on the spot. Now I hunt them that hunted me and hunted my son. And I want to expose them. I want people to know who they are, what they're about, how they do what they do. And so there's a science into it. There's a medical into it. There's a psychological aspect to it. There's a police aspect to it, an investigative aspect, a Native American aspect, and a spiritual aspect. All those hats have to be worn by me. I realize that one hat's not going to do it. The cop hat's not going to get it. When you say, well, you're studying the implants and you've done 27 surgical interventions from India to the United States. Wow, that's incredible. Wonderful. What makes you think it's a medical problem? It isn't. That's only a part of it. What makes you think that it's a science problem? It isn't. That's only part of it. What makes you think it's a spiritual problem? That's only part of it. If you don't have all those hats on, you're never going to be able to understand the whole problem. You just know you can't get it, because you're wanting to. It's like trying to make condensed milk, and what you're going to do is pour a bunch of water in the milk as much as possible so that you can stand it, and the milk is going to be almost look like water when it's over. And with no nutritional value, that's what you're doing to your thinking when you use only one hat to figure it all out. You're never going to get the whole story. It's not going to work. It won't work that way. So I've only met 8 people that met one of these beings in all of my tens of thousands of people I've interviewed over the last 50 years. Every one of those people's lives had been radically altered or changed as a result from their case in point. I was in Los Angeles at a conference, and while I was there, there was a really good-looking, strong, really fine chiseled black man, probably about 25 years old. He kept avoiding me the whole conference. He would never come around my booth at all. He went everywhere, but never around me. The last night I'm there, I'm loading everything up, getting ready to leave, and I heard this voice behind me as I'm loading up. Said, "Mr. Sims?" I said, "Yes, sir." I turned around, it was him. He said, "I want to ask you a question if you don't mind." I said, "You've been avoiding me for 3 days." Abductees do that. They hide, ignore, or destroy their own evidence.
You was already probably thinking that he may be experiencer or whatever.
Well, I knew it as soon as I saw him. Whenever he hadn't stood away from me, I knew he did not want to. He wants the answer, but doesn't want to hear it. It's like I want the answer, but I don't want to remember it. Mm. So he says, he gave him a piece of paper and a pen, and he began to draw. this entity. And as he began to draw, he said, I want to know if you've ever seen this being before. He starts drawing it. I took the pen out of his hand and finished the drawing. And all he said was, "Oh my God, oh my God." And he ran away. He was horrified because what he had seen in his so-called night terrors and dreams, it was absolutely 100% real. I've met those beings in person. I know what they are. I know what they do. I know what they're like. And people always ask me, every conference, they say the same thing. Well, just describe them to us and tell us all about that. No, I won't. That's because every conference I go to, someone always says, oh, yeah, me too. I've had the exact same experience. And last person said that, I said, okay, why don't you just describe them to me? Oh, they have long flowing hair. They're basically describing Nordic. And they sit at this great council. They have long flowing robes. And I said, thank you for playing. You're wrong. As you're making it up. As you're watching too many Star Trek shows. I'm sorry. That's not what it's like. It's not the experience. And an entity is not like that in any shape or form. Wrong. 100%. So when somebody like the guy starts drawing the being, and then when I realize he's absolutely drawn one of the five, I finished the drawing point. Then at that point, his consciousness just exploded. I mean, everything he didn't want to know became true.
You never heard from him again, or you saw him again?
Never. No.
Wow.
Never heard from him. Never. One lady that in Austin, Texas, in her experience, her daughter met one of these beings and ended up with grand mal epilepsy. It's so severe that the doctor told me, he said, I can't give her any more medication. Said, it'll kill her. I don't know what's wrong with her. I don't know what. I can't fix this. I don't know what to do.
Mm-hmm.
So the 8 people that I have met, and through all these years, every one of them, their lives have been changed as a result of those encounters. It's not like alien abduction at all. It's nothing like it.
It's not one of the 7 flavors that you normally talk about?
No, they're the ones who made, hatched, cloned, or manufactured them. They're the ones in charge. That's the best way to describe it.
Do you think that's part of a connection with some of these DUMBs, deep underground military bases? Maybe that's where they conduct some of these experimentations, and maybe even that hybridization programs or whatever's going on down there?
The best way to describe this, and to keep it simplistic without getting complicated, is the alien program has only been in existence for a couple hundred years. That's all. It doesn't mean the alien hadn't been around. It just means this program called contact or abduction has only been here for a couple hundred years max. And that program is almost over. It's only got a few years left, according to the alien, and it failed. It did not net them what they wanted. Everybody, well, they came here to get our DNA. No, sorry, thank you for playing. You lose. That's the excuse. Those are excuses for why they abduct you. We're here to check your DNA. We're here to upgrade your DNA. We're here to do that. It's more likely especially some of us, they're here to downgrade our DNA, if anything. And the fact, one psychologist challenged me one night on a radio program. He says, well, the reason 45% of your abductees are Native American, Indian, Irish, and Celtic, Derrel, is because the Native Americans are so spiritual. And you're missing the point, I think. I said, well, thank you for upgrading my understanding. I said, I don't think that's the occasion. He said, what do you mean? I said, Well, if you're not black, you better not talk about black people. If you're not Irish, you better not talk about Irish people. If you're not Hispanic, you better keep your mouth shut about Hispanic people. If you're not Native American, you need to keep your mouth shut about Native people. He said, yeah, I understand. I said, I am Native. So I'll talk about them. I said, in the 1800s, in certain places, if you went there without permission, you're going to get a real close haircut. It's a very painful experiences. I said, I don't think spirituality was what the word we're looking for right here. Some of these people are some of the most brutal you've ever seen in your entire, in your imagination. The brutality is stuff that it's hard to even describe. That what they would even do to each other, much less a white man coming on their land. I said, my point is this. It doesn't mean that people can't be spiritual. It doesn't mean that. It just means that, I said, okay, the other half of the equation, Native American Irish, a good example. He said, well, the Irish are really spiritual. I said, listen to me carefully. You're missing it. You're missing the barn by 15 yards. When you go to Notre Dame, there's a big sign there. It says, the Fighting Irish. I wonder why they put that up there. Why didn't they say, the Spiritual Irish? They didn't put that up there. They put the Fighting Irish. Busting heads and taking names is what we've done our entire life. At Native Americans, Irish, Scots, and Celts. That's what we did. Fighting is what we did. War. That's what we did. Now, if you understand that in terms of the alien, maybe he didn't come here to upgrade my DNA. Maybe he came here to downgrade it. Get me off the book, so to speak. I'm a problem.
Get us off the spiritual path?
I'm not here to help him out, so to speak. I'm here to end his program if I can. So that would not, and Native Americans, Irish, Celtic, these people are not the prime people that they really, if they're going to do anything, it would be to downgrade or alter or get you off the book, so to speak. You're a problem, not a blessing. That's just the way it is.
Do you think that, about to get a little woo here, I don't know what I had to put on, but I've interviewed several people past year and a half, and one is he comes on once a month, Nathaniel Gillis, and I think he was at that conference there in Manchester or England that you went to.
Manchester, yeah.
Nathaniel Gillis. He comes on once a month for a little verbal presentation. I just let him speak for about 45 minutes or so. But so I've been doing a lot of thinking that whatever we're dealing with, I hate to even use the connotation of, demonic, there's some type of evil. It's just like people call them, some of these things, interdimensional. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
But how do we know? A lot of people in this field, they think, or that, armchair researchers, whatever, they think interdimensional, outside of Earth, whatever. Maybe this force, this dark demonic force or whatever, maybe some of them, yes, they could be interdimensional. But it's just like this house, your house that we're in. This room, that my office here, could be the third dimension. The next room over could be another dimension, but it's the same house. It's Earth. You know what I mean?
True.
We can only see, I think we see less than 1% of the visible light spectrum. So what I'm saying is, and then I don't know, I've been going on a lot of these rabbit holes, unconventional compared to the norm in ufology.
Yes.
So then I think of your research, hatch, clone, made, manufactured. And then I think, okay, sounds very plausible. Then I go down this other rabbit hole of, that people like Nathaniel and just other people that I researched, into, and that there's a demonic force. There's some type of force. You call it some researchers call them archons or whatever, but do you think that these flavors that you call them, hatch, made, manufactured, cloned, do you think those are vessels for this force, whatever this is?
Yes, that's just the alien version. That's just the alien program. There are other programs. I teach a PowerPoint presentation, which my wife thinks is the best one I've ever had, and it's called Aliens, Ghosts, Demons, and Angels, and the signatures of each one of them. They're all different, and they are notably different. So those are 4 programs basically. One of them God has, and the other one, fallen angelics. Obviously, that's a different circumstance. But I go into the difference between how would you know a fallen angel from one of God's angels? How could you possibly know? Demonic signatures, ghost signatures, alien signatures. How do you know what's what? How can you tell the difference? In fact, how I did this presentation the first time, a ghost conference invited me in Houston, not Houston, but up toward Dallas. And they said, would you please come speak to us? And I said, I'm primarily a UFO guy. I don't know, a lot of you guys think that a lot of the alien research guys are nuts, and a lot of the alien guys think you ghost guys are nuts. I said, not a whole lot of respect there. And they said, please come and speak to us. And I said, okay. And I did. And that was a presentation I gave. A brief look at alien signatures, demonic signatures, ghost signatures, and alien signatures, similarities and distinctions. And that was, it rocked the house. They absolutely went wild over it. Said, you got to come back next year. I said, I just came here to help you. I'm not here to try to get your guest or take off your show or whatever. But the point is that, as I told all of them, I said, there's something you have to understand about yourself. And it's true of the alien phenomena, the ghost phenomena, everything else. You're unique. There's nothing like you. You're sought after by ghosts, demons, angels, aliens, and even your government. If you won't use your brain to think very well, the government will be glad to supply you with plenty of other thoughts that you can dwell on. That'll keep you tied up for the next 20 years. Mm-hmm. They do that. You're unique. You have enormous potential. You're so unique that the scripture even talks about you being protected by angelic interventions. So the point is that in each of the reason I bring this up at the last minute of our presentation is I want people to realize, and I'll close with this. One of the finest Bible scholars I ever knew, it was a personal friend of mine. It's really funny because he would come to Roswell and talk to me privately. Now, he's a biblical scholar, Hebrew Ugartic scholar, and he would ask me all these interesting questions about, because I'm a Christian as well, and he had asked me these questions that he couldn't figure out from a PhD level and research. He said, and I laughed and I said, I don't mean to laugh at you. I said, it's just kind of funny that we have these little private meetings, just me and you. And then you go teach your people, and I teach the people here at the museum and so on. And he said, one of the big questions I have is, he said, I'm pretty sure that the chupacabra exists, whatever that thing is. I said, okay. I said, a lot of your cohorts are not going to agree with that. And He said, I knew that if anybody knew anything about it, you would. And I said, I actually would. I said, I think I said, first of all, I got one in my freezer. He said, what? I said, I've got one in my freezer. That's number one. When I tell you I know something, I don't tell you because I think it's true. I can go to court on it. I can prove it. I can bring the DNA with me or the body. And I said, this is going to sting a little bit. And he said, okay. He said, that's all right. I said, you're part of the problem. He said, what do you mean? I said, scholars generally are far apart from the church is a good example. You guys hardly ever show up. When you do, you act like you're, the best thing that fell out of heaven or something. He said, yeah. And I said, a lot of you guys in the 2nd and 3rd century, especially when Catholicism started up, I said, they did all kinds of weird things like translate scriptures into Latin so nobody could, because almost no one could read. And they got it out of the Greek and they got it out of the Hebrew because they didn't want people to understand what it was that they were covering up. I said, you're actually part of that problem. He said, what do you mean? I said, well, I'm going to ask you a question. He said, okay. And I said, I'm going to quote you part of a scripture and I want you to tell me what it says in Hebrew. He said, okay. I said, behold the horse leech. He said, I'm uncomfortable translating that. I said, I'm sure you are. I said, I know what it says. And I know you do too. But the problem is you don't want the rest of us to know about that. Because that's not one of the things you're going to learn in Sunday school. But it's in the Bible. And so there are a lot of things in Scripture that are fascinating and make things a lot clearer and a lot easier to understand if people like you wouldn't keep trying to reinterpret it for us. I said, tell me exactly what the word horse leech means. And he said, well, it's kind of a vampire. I said, thank you. Thank you for telling me what I already know. I said, now, why is that difficult for you or anybody else to mention in church? It's not a vampire like the guy around with teeth biting people. It's not talking about that. It's talking about something that sucks blood. And it's not a leech on a horse like what is kind of indicated in the English language. That's not it, and you know it. He said, no, that's not what it is. That's well, it's worse than that. And he said, what do you mean? I said, there's your chupacabra. That's the reason you have a problem. A lot of people have a problem with it. You can't find it in Scripture. He said, yeah, that really is the problem. I said, I just showed it to you. Behold the horse leech. And the amazing thing about it, I said, my friend, I said, it says she, it's feminine, has 2 daughters. It procreates, whatever it is. I said, so here we are ignoring these amazing things that we think are ghosts or aliens or demonic or whatever they are, and yet don't even want to talk about them. And there they are in Scripture. I said, that's what bothers me about people like you. I said, you're a good man. You're a decent man. I love you like a brother. But I despise what your system of thinking produces. And that is basically a cover-up. You interpret things for people and tell them something they can swallow, basically. I want to hear exactly, if God's got something to tell me, I don't want someone reinterpreting it for me. I want to hear the exact message, whatever it is. I said, I'm going to tell you a great truth. It's kind of funny. And he said, okay. I said, toilet paper's not in the Bible either. That doesn't mean it doesn't exist just because it's not mentioned in Scripture. I said, so that's my point. A little humor there, but The point is that just because it's not mentioned in Scripture, first of all, as I told him, I said, "You're a Hebrew and an Agartic scholar, and you don't even know this." I said, "That's amazing to me." I said, "It just amazes me." Anyway, we had a long discussion about that. He's a good friend. I really think the world of him. I really do.
Do you think that's the problem with us as a whole?
I think,
as a species, is because
look at the UFO phenomena. What is it? Who is the alien? Tell me who the alien is. Well, they're interdimensional beings. They're space beings from Jupiter. They're space beings from multiple dimensions. They're time travelers. Really? They're all of those? What if they're not? I'm not saying that there aren't beings from other worlds. In fact, the scriptures are real clear about that. If those of you want to have some fun, the scriptures say that the Apostle Paul in the book of Ephesians, 6 chapters, said there are principalities, powers, thrones, and dominions. All those are bigger than you can imagine. And he gives the location of where they're located. You ready for this? He lists 3 places in the scripture, and one of them, the heaven you see is the atmosphere. The heaven out there is outer space. In the third heaven, the scripture says where God is. The place he describes the principalities, powers, thrones, and dominions, the ones who hatched, grown, made, manufactured this mess, are located in the second heaven. It's called outer space. That's pretty amazing stuff. And it's been there in scripture for 2,000 years. And people are still wondering, well, I wonder why God doesn't tell us all that. He did. You weren't listening.
You had certain elite factions that would mistranslate things or purposely mistranslate things.
They do that on purpose. Yes, they do. And you hit it right on the head. And because people can't deal with that. I went and spoke to a church one time, and after I spoke, the pastor walked up to me and said, "Well, I hope the little green men don't get us." And I said, "That probably pretty amusing to you." I said, "I've already talked to half a dozen members of your church, and they're abductees. And they don't like your comments at all because they realize you don't have a clue. All you know how to do is run a church. You have no idea how to deal with them and their problems, and they know it."
What was his response?
Oh, he was horrified. And I said, "I'll be glad to send them to you anytime you think you're good enough to counsel them and help them out. But the fact is, you don't even believe the phenomena, much less know where they're at or what they do, or what they're up to. You don't have a clue." To you, it's, well, that's just the old devil. That's a nice answer, but it's kind of a wet blanket you just throw over everything and hope it works. Like I said, everything has different signatures: ghosts, fallen angels, God's angels, demonics, and aliens. They all have different signatures, every one of them.
One last question before we end it, Derrel. If there was one case, because you've been doing this a long time, my friend, if there was one case or one piece of evidence, which hand in hand, it depends how you look at it, that you could present in front of like a congressional hearing, what case or piece of evidence would you present in front of a congressional hearing to prove that there is something going on? Well,
the best case would be the mass abduction December 8th, 1992. And December 8th and December 11th, it was a double mass abduction of 8 people in 2 states and several cities. They were all taken by small craft, abducted by the alien to a craft that was approximately 50 miles thick and 600 miles across. And we have a video of it. Somebody in Japan was filming the moon at the time, and filmed that craft. And the question one might want to ask is, what in the world does an alien need a craft 50 miles thick, 600 miles across?
That's what I was thinking.
Because if you don't have a planet and you're biological or biomechanical anyway, what would you want a planet for anyhow? Everything is made, hatched, cloned, and manufactured right there. That's the manufacturing plant, so to speak. That's where business is conducted. And they don't need a planet. They just move this thing wherever they want. It doesn't make any difference.
Well, Derrel, man, blow my mind like you always do. It truly is a treat and honor to have you come back on the show. This is the fourth time we've had a discussion. The first time was in person there in Houston, the Skydancer UFO conference. Hopefully we can get that thing going back again. But yeah, I look forward to get you back on down the road, and there's a lot of things we didn't cover, but I just want to let you speak and just let you because you've been doing this a long time, Derrel, and I just want to, have a platform where, because I know a lot of times, and I've been guilty with you being on the show probably last year, and I just interject a little too much. And that's with certain people, man, just let them talk. They've been doing this a long time. They know what the hell they're talking about. Let them talk and let them spill their heart out. And, they got a lot of information in here, and you've been doing it a long time. And I respect that. I respect the time and commitment that you've done for, this research that you've done over the years. And again, thank you very much for coming back on Beyond Forbidden, Derrel.
Well, if any of your people are interested in this, all I got to do is go to thealienhunter.com and click on, and you can click on the bottom of it, and it emails me, and I answer all my emails. Ask any questions you want. I'll answer 99.9999% of them.
Derrel, thank you very much, man.
Thank you. Have a good one, my friend.